Hello, friends. Today we have a story about a betrayal that is never forgotten, a love that waits, and a forgiveness that only the strong are capable of. Make yourselves comfortable. The rain had been pouring for 3 days in a row. Zoia stood at the window of her rented room and watched the drops slide down the dirty glass, leaving crooked trails. From behind the wall, the neighbor's TV was blaring, some talk show where everyone was shouting at each other. The smell of fried onions seeped through the cracks of the old door. She was 52 years old. In her pocket, 3,000 rubles. In her account, 0. Her husband had died 8 months ago, leaving behind debts she hadn't even suspected. They had taken the apartment. She had sold the car back in the spring. Her daughter, Anastasia, lived somewhere far away with her husband and hadn't answered her calls for half a year. Zoia ran her finger along the windowsill. A gray trace of dust remained on her skin. She sighed and stepped away from the window. On the table lay a newspaper with ads circled in red marker. Caregiver wanted. Accommodation, meals, decent pay. Experience working with blind people is an advantage. She didn't have experience, but she didn't have a choice either. The telephone conversation was short. A dry, official female voice asked her a few questions and scheduled the interview for the next day.
The address turned out to be in an old district where merchants and industrialists once lived, and now their mansions passed from hand to hand among those called new money. The house was huge, 3 stories high, made of brick, with tall windows and a cast-iron fence. Zoia stopped at the gate. The gates opened silently. A gravel path led to the main entrance. Old linden trees grew on both sides. Their bare branches scratched the gray sky. Somewhere, a crow cawed. The door was opened by a woman of about 40, tall, thin, with chestnut hair gathered in a tight bun. She wore a strict gray suit, and around her neck a thin gold chain. "Zoya Petrovna?" she asked, looking somewhere past her. "Yes, that's me. Come in. I am Raisa Mikhailovna, the house manager." Inside, it smelled of wood and something floral. Lilies, it seemed. Zoia had never liked lilies. They reminded her of funerals. The hall was spacious, with a marble floor and a wide staircase leading upstairs. Paintings in heavy gold frames hung on the walls. Landscapes, portraits, something abstract. "This way, please." Raisa Mikhailovna led her into a small sitting room. 2 armchairs, a coffee table, a fireplace with dead coals. Through the window, the garden was visible, neglected, with blackened rose bushes and paths overgrown with weeds. "Take a seat." Zoia sat on the edge of the armchair, placing her hands on her knees. Raisa Mikhailovna remained standing. "I will be frank with you," she began. "The job is not simple. Pavel Arkadyevich is a difficult man. He went blind 3 years ago following an accident. Since then, he has changed 7 caregivers."
No one lasted more than 2 months. "Why?" asked Zoia. Raisa Mikhailovna hesitated a little. "He can be sharp, rude, demanding. He does not tolerate pity or incompetence." She looked at Zoia with an appraising gaze. "Are you married?" "Widow." "Children?" "A daughter, adult." "Bad habits?" "No." "Education?" "Pedagogical. I worked as a primary school teacher for 20 years. Raisa Mikhailovna nodded, as if ticking a box on an invisible list. "The conditions are as follows. You live here, in a room on the 2nd floor. Meals are on the house. 1 day off per week, by agreement. The payment is 100,000 a month, plus bonuses at Pavel Arkadyevich's discretion." Zoia almost choked on air. 100,000.
That was more than she earned at school in 3 months. "Your duties: to monitor the master's daily schedule, accompany him on walks, read aloud to him, help him with documents requiring his signature. Pavel Arkadyevich has his own nurse. She comes 3 times a week, so medical procedures are not part of your duties. Zoya swallowed. I agree. Do not rush. First you must meet Pavel Arkadievich, if he approves of you. The room on the 3rd floor was flooded with the gray light of the gloomy day. The heavy curtains were half drawn, the furniture made of dark wood. No paintings on the walls, just shelves of books reaching the ceiling. 100,000 of books that the master could no longer read. He sat in an armchair by the window, his back to the door. Zoya could only see the back of his head with short gray hair and broad shoulders under a dark sweater. Pavel Arkadievich, Raisa Mikhailovna cleared her throat. The candidate for the caregiver position. He did not turn around. Name. The voice was low with a rasp, the voice of a man used to giving orders and unused to repeating them. Zoya Petrovna, she answered herself, taking a step forward. How old are you? 52. Why do you want this job? Zoya hesitated. She did not want to lie. And what was the point? I need money and a place to live. He snorted. It is unknown whether approvingly or mockingly. Honest. That is already something. The previous ones, all as one, spouted nonsense about helping one's neighbor and noble causes. He turned around. Zoya froze. His face was disfigured by scars, thin like a spiderweb, running from his eyes to his temples and cheekbones. His eyes, gray, cloudy, motionless, looked through her at a point behind her back. But it was not the scars that made her heart stop. She knew this face. She knew it from 27 years ago, when it was young and beautiful, when these eyes looked at her with love, with rage, with despair. Pavel Arkadievich Volkov. Pavel, the man she betrayed, the man whose life she destroyed, the man she ran from, changing her name, leaving for the other end of the country, burying her past under the thickness of years and silence. Come closer, he said. Her legs did not obey her, but she forced herself to take a step, then another one. He reached out his hand, not to shake hands, but to touch. His fingers found her elbow, slid down to her wrist. Your hands are cold. Yes, she mumbled. It is chilly outside. The voice is pleasant. It is not squeaky. He let go of her hand. Raisa, leave us. The door behind the manager closed silently. Zoya stood, afraid to move, afraid to breathe in. He did not recognize her. He had no way of recognizing her. 27 years, another name, another life. She herself would have hardly recognized herself in the photos from back then. A skinny girl with long dark hair and huge eyes full of stupid hopes. Are you nervous? He said. It was not a question. A little. Why? Is it a big house? And she stammered. Scary. He grinned, and the scars on his face gathered into a bizarre pattern. Do not be afraid. I am aware of how I look. The advantage of blindness. I do not have to see this every day in the mirror. That is not what I meant. I know. He leaned back in the armchair. You are hired, unless you change your mind yourself. Raisa will show you the room. You start tomorrow. Zoya opened her mouth to say something, to thank, to refuse, to confess, but could not utter a word. She just nodded, and only then remembered that he does not see. Thank you, she whispered. Until tomorrow. She walked out of the room on stiff legs, went down the stairs, took the key from Raisa Mikhailovna's hands, listened to instructions that she immediately forgot. A single thought beat in her head. He did not recognize her. He could not recognize her. She was safe. For now. In that night, Zoya did not sleep. She lay on the narrow bed in her rented room, staring at the ceiling and thinking about how strangely fate arranges things. 27 years she ran. 27 years she built a new life brick by brick. The marriage to Nikolai, the birth of Anastasia, work at school, moves from city to city, attempts to forget. And here now, when everything collapsed, when she was left alone, without money, without a house, without a future, fate brought her directly to the doorstep of the man she feared meeting the most, Pavel Volkov. Once he was a simple engineer at a factory, talented, ambitious, poor as a church mouse. They met at the wedding of mutual acquaintances. She was 23 years old, he was 30. He looked at her as if she were the only woman in the world. They were together for 2 years. 2 years of happiness, arguments, reconciliations, plans. He worked 16 hours a day, putting aside every kopeck. He said he would build her a house, that they would get married as soon as he got on his feet. And then Boris appeared.
Boris Kremnev, Pavel's friend from institute days. Handsome, charming, the son of the director of a large enterprise. Money, connections, self-confidence, everything Pavel did not have. And Lidia, that was her name then, made her choice. Boris appeared in her life on a summer evening when Pavel stayed late at work again. Lidia sat alone in the cafe, waiting for 2 hours already. She was furious. And then a tall man with a charming smile approached her table. "Are you Pavel Volkov's girlfriend? I am his friend, Boris. He told me a lot about you." He sat opposite, ordered her a coffee, then a dessert, then another coffee. He spoke easily, joked, looked at her as if she were the most interesting woman in the world, not a tired girl in a cheap dress waiting for her eternally busy fiancé, but a queen. Pavel came an hour later, sweaty, guilty, with a bouquet of crumpled daisies. Boris stood up, shook his hand, patted him on the shoulder. "Take care of her, friend. You do not find such women on every street corner." And he left. But since that evening, something changed. Lidia caught herself thinking about Boris, about his confidence, his expensive watch, the way he looked at her. Pavel walked more and more, came home later and later, talked about some project that would change their lives. She nodded and did not listen. And then Boris called. "Pavel asked me to take you to his parents' summer house. He cannot make it, as usual." She knew it was a lie, but she got into his car. They did not go to any summer house. Boris brought her to a restaurant, a real one, with white tablecloths and waiters in bow ties. Then they walked on the embankment until dawn. He spoke to her about Paris, about his plans, about what her life could be like. "Pavel is a good guy," he said, looking at the water, "but he will never get out of this swamp. He will slog away until his hair turns gray and die an engineer at the same factory. And you deserve more." She knew she had to object, to defend Pavel, to leave, but she did none of the three. The romance with Boris lasted 3 months. Secret meetings, expensive gifts, promises. He said he loved her, that he would take her away from Pavel, that they would leave together. Lidia believed, or wanted to believe. You can no longer tell now. Then Pavel found out. How, she never found out. Maybe someone saw them together. Maybe Boris himself let it slip. He liked to brag about his victories. But one evening, Pavel came to her home. Not tired, not guilty, calm, scaringly calm. "Is it true?" he asked from the threshold. She could lie. She should have lied. But she looked into his eyes and could not. Yes. He did not scream, did not cry. He just stood and looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time, as if trying to understand how this woman, the very one he loved more than life, could do such a thing. "Why?" he asked finally. And Lidia said the thing she regretted for all the following 27 years. "Because with him I have a future, and with you only promises." Pavel left in silence. He did not slam the door, did not utter a word. He simply turned and went out into the darkness. The next day, Lidia learned that he had fought with Boris, brutally, until blood was drawn. He broke his nose and 2 ribs. They took Boris to the hospital, Pavel to the police. Boris's father, that enterprise director, activated his connections. Pavel faced real prison time for grievous bodily harm,
And Boris set a condition. The case would be closed if Pavel left the city and never returned. He left, and a week later Boris announced to Lidia that their relationship was a mistake, that he was engaged to the daughter of an official, that she was a cute girl, but not from his circle. Lidia was left with nothing. She did not remember the next 6 months. She drank, cried, did not leave the house. Her mother looked at her with silent reproach. Her father did not look at her at all. In a small town, rumors spread quickly. Everyone knew that she had destroyed a good guy's life for the sake of a rich boy who abandoned her. She lost her job. Her friends stopped calling. Neighbors whispered behind her back. And then Lidia did what all cowards do. She ran. She left for the other end of the country, to a distant relative she barely knew. She changed her documents. Her aunt worked at the passport office, and for a small sum, helped process the papers, as a name change after an allegedly failed marriage. Lidia Petrovna Maltseva became Zoia Petrovna Voronina. New name, new life, a new chance. A year later she met Nikolai. Simple, reliable, boring. He did not look at her like a queen, did not promise her Paris. But he was there, and that was enough. 25 years of marriage, a daughter, moves, work at school.
Zoia had almost forgotten that she was once Lidia. She almost believed that the past was buried forever. And here now, he looked at her with dead, gray eyes. The first day of work began at 7 in the morning. Zoia arrived at the mansion with a small bag. All her belongings fit into a single sports bag, bought by Nikolai back in the day. Raisa Mikhailovna met her at the door and led her to the room on the second floor. A not very large but clean bed, a wardrobe, a desk, a window overlooking the garden. "Breakfast at 8, said the manager. "Pavel Arkadievich wakes up at 9. "Until that time, you are free." "But what?" Zoia hesitated. "What does he like for breakfast?" Raisa Mikhailovna looked at her with something resembling respect. "Oatmeal with honey and nuts, black tea without sugar. No eggs, he hates the smell." Zoia nodded, memorizing. "One more thing," added Raisa. "Do not try to pity him, and do not lie to him. He senses a lie like a dog senses fear." With these words, she left, leaving Zoia alone with her thoughts. At 9 o'clock, Zoia was already standing at the door of Pavel Arkadievich's office. Her heart was beating so hard she feared he would hear it. "Come in." The voice was heard from inside, although she hadn't even had time to knock. He sat in the same armchair by the window. On the small table nearby, an untouched cup of tea. "Good morning," said Zoia, trying not to let her voice tremble. "Hello." He turned his head in her direction. "How did you sleep in the new place?" "Good, thank you." "You are lying. You have the voice of a person who hasn't slept all night." Zoia bit her lip. Raisa had warned her. "I was nervous. First day at the new job." He drummed his fingers on the armrest of the chair. "Fine. Today we have reading. On the table in the corner is a stack of books. Take the top one." Zoia approached the table. The book turned out to be old, in a worn leather cover. She opened the first page. "Crime and Punishment," she read aloud. "Fyodor Mikhailovich?" "I know who the author is," Pavel interrupted. "Read from where the bookmark is." Zoia found the bookmark, a silk ribbon of cherry color, and began to read. Her voice trembled at the first few paragraphs, but gradually she got used to it. The words flowed smoothly, the story captivated her, and for a while Zoia forgot where she was and to whom she was reading. "Stop," said Pavel after half an hour. She fell silent. "You have a good voice. Not acting, but alive. The previous one read like a robot." "Thank you." "It is not a compliment, it is just a fact." He turned to the window. "Enough for today. You may go." Zoia closed the book and headed for the door. "Zoia Petrovna." She froze. "Did you really work for 20 years as a teacher?" "Yes." "Where?" In various cities. My husband and I moved often. Why? She swallowed. His work required it. What was his job? Engineer. Pause. Long, heavy. Engineer, repeated Pavel slowly. Look at that. I was also an engineer once, a long time ago, in another life. Zoia stood at the door, unable to move. He does not know. He cannot know. It is just a coincidence. Go, he said finally. Lunch is at 1. Do not be late. She walked out of the room and pressed herself against the wall in the corridor. Her hands were trembling. The blood pulsed in her temples. It's just a coincidence, she repeated to herself. Just a coincidence. The days flowed one after another, similar like twins. In the morning, breakfast, then reading, then the walk through the garden if the weather permitted. After lunch, Pavel worked with documents, dictated letters, signed papers that Raisa read aloud to him. In the evening, reading again, or simply silence. Zoia was getting used to the huge house, the silent servants, the master's sudden mood swings. Pavel could be almost friendly, and in a minute explode over a trifle. He could be silent for hours, and suddenly start questioning her about her life, about the past, about family. She answered cautiously, weighing every word. Truth mixed with lies. Nikolai was an engineer. True. They moved often. True. The daughter lives far away. True. Why doesn't she call? We quarreled. Because of what? Because of the inheritance. The last one was a lie. Zoia still didn't understand why Anastasia stopped talking to her. Their last conversation was an ordinary one, about the weather, about work, about the grandchildren Anastasia was in no hurry to make. And then silence. 6 months of silence. You have a sad voice when you talk about your daughter, Pavel observed one day. Zoia fell silent. I lost my child too, he said unexpectedly. His son. He was 23 years old. Accident. The same one in which I went blind. Zoia felt a lump in her throat. I am very sorry. Don't. His voice was even, almost indifferent. Pity is a useless emotion. It changes nothing. He fell silent, and Zoia understood that the conversation was over. But that night she stayed awake for a long time, thinking about Pavel's son, about the boy she never knew, about what he might have been like, and about the fact that possibly, if she hadn't betrayed his father 27 years ago, everything would have turned out differently. 1 month passed. October was replaced by November. The garden beyond the window became completely bare, and in the morning frost glistened on the grass. Zoia got into the rhythm of the house, measured, almost monastic. She found out that Pavel got rich from construction. After he left his hometown, the same one he was driven out of because of the fight with Boris, he started from zero. He worked as a site foreman, then section chief, then opened his own firm. By 40 years old, he owned a construction holding. At 50, half of the city he lived in now. Money is just a tool, he said once, when they were sitting in the library after dinner. People think wealth makes you happy. Nonsense. It makes you free. And freedom is the possibility to choose who to be and who to be with. And who did you choose to be? Zoia asked. He grinned. A lonely old man in a dark house. Ironic, isn't it? Zoia wanted to object, but fell silent. He wasn't old, 59 years old, only 7 years older than her. But the blindness and the loss of his son aged him ahead of time. In his movements was the heaviness of a man who is tired of carrying the burden, but cannot throw it off. One evening, when Pavel fell asleep earlier than usual, Zoia decided to walk through the house. She rarely left the perimeter of her room, the library, and the kitchen. The rest of the rooms seemed like foreign territory, but curiosity won. She went up to the 3rd floor, where there were rooms no one entered. Raisa had mentioned once that these are the former rooms of Pavel's son and guest bedrooms. The door at the end of the corridor was ajar. Zoia stopped, listening. Silence. Only the wind scratched the windows, and somewhere below an old pendulum clock ticked. She pushed the door. The room was bathed in moonlight. A large bed, desk, shelves with books. On the walls, posters of rock bands, photos. A young man's room, frozen in time. Zoia approached the table. A frame with a photo. A boy of about 20 years, blonde with Pavel's smile. Next to him, a woman, beautiful, brunette, with tired eyes. Pavel's wife. Zoia took the frame in her hands. On the back, the inscription, Maxim and Irina. Irina means it's not the wife. Maybe the son's fiancé? Did you find something interesting? Zoia started so hard she almost dropped the frame. In the door stood Raisa, as always impeccable, with an impenetrable face. Forgive me, the door was open. Curiosity is a dangerous quality. Raisa approached and took the frame from her hands, especially in this house. Who is this woman? Zoia asked, though she understood she shouldn't. Raisa looked at her for a long time. Then she answered, Irina, Maxim's fiancée. They were supposed to get married 1 month after the accident. What happened to her? She is alive, if that interests you. Raisa put the frame back, but Pavel Arkadievich has forbidden mentioning her name in this house. Why? Raisa turned to the door. Because she was at the wheel. Zoia didn't sleep until morning. She lay in the dark, thinking about Irina, the woman who killed Pavel's son and blinded him himself. Where is she now? In prison? Free? Why did Pavel forbid pronouncing her name? And most importantly, why was Zoia so uncomfortable with this story? Maybe because she herself once destroyed Pavel's life. Not in a car accident, but no less cruel. Betrayal is also a kind of accident, only the victims remain alive, and that is sometimes worse. In the morning, she went down to breakfast with red eyes from lack of sleep. Pavel was already sitting at the table, motionless like a statue. You slept poorly, he said when she sat opposite. How do you know? I hear by your steps. They are heavier than usual. Zoia poured herself tea, trying not to clatter the dishes. Raisa said you were on the 3rd floor yesterday. The cup froze halfway to her lips. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize. He turned his head towards her. I didn't forbid you to walk around the house. Just that some rooms keep memories that are better not disturbed. I am sorry for your son. I know. Pause. Did you see the photograph? He said. Not a question, a statement. Yes. And Raisa told you about Irina. Zoia nodded, then remembered he doesn't see. Yes. Pavel took the cup, took a sip. His movements were precise, calculated. In the 3 years of blindness, he learned to manage without sight better than many manage with it. Irina was a good girl, he said unexpectedly. Maxim loved her. I loved her. She was supposed to become part of our family. What happened? The accident. He put the cup on the saucer. We were returning from the vacation house. Irina at the wheel, me next to her, Maxim in the back. A truck came out into the oncoming lane. Irina tried to avoid. He fell silent. You don't have to tell, Zoia said softly. I must. He clenched his fingers on the edge of the table. Maxim died on the spot. I lost my sight because of the shards of the windshield. Irina escaped with scratches. It's not her fault. The truck came out into the oncoming lane. I know. His voice was dull, broken. But every time I heard her voice after the accident, I heard the screeching of brakes. Every time she came, I smelled gasoline and blood. She isn't guilty, but I couldn't be near her. Zoia was silent. What else to say here? She left after half a year, Pavel continued. I gave her money, a lot. I told her to start a new life. She cried,
said she loved me like a father, that she wouldn't leave me. But you drove her away. Yes, he turned to the window, a meaningless gesture of a blind man, a habit that cannot be rooted out. Because every day next to her, I died again. And she too. Sometimes love means letting go. After breakfast, Zoia went out into the garden. She needed to breathe, to think, to put her thoughts in order. Pavel and Irina's story gave her no peace. Something in it was incorrect, left unsaid to the end, like a puzzle missing a few pieces. She walked along the paths without noticing the cold. The bare trees stretched their black branches toward the sky, like the hands of drowning men. Somewhere crows were cawing. Zoya Petrovna? She turned around. A young woman, short and plump, in a white coat, was hurrying toward her on the path. I am Tamara, the nurse. The woman was panting. Her cheeks were flushed. Raisa Mikhailovna said you were in the garden. Can I have a minute? Of course. They moved away toward an old gazebo, covered in dead ivy. I heard you were in Maxim's room yesterday, said Tamara, lowering her voice. News travels fast. It is a small house. In the sense that there are few people? Tamara looked around, as if checking to see if anyone was eavesdropping. I wanted to warn you. Don't get involved in this story. In which story? With Irina, with the accident. Tamara nervously fiddled with a button on her coat. Everything here isn't as simple as it seems. What do you mean? Tamara opened her mouth and closed it immediately. Raisa was approaching the gazebo. Tamara, you are expected in the house. It is time for Pavel Arkadievich's procedures. Yes, of course. Tamara cast a quick glance at Zoia, scared, warning, and hurried toward the house. Raisa remained standing there. Beautiful garden, isn't it? She said in an even voice. It is a pity there is no one to take care of it. Raisa Mikhailovna? Yes. Zoia wanted to ask about Tamara, about Irina, about the fact that it is not so simple here. But something in the manager's eyes made her fall silent. Nothing, just bet it is cold. Then go into the house. Pavel Arkadievich will be free soon. In the evening, Zoia sat in the library, pretending to read. In fact, she was thinking about Tamara's words. Everything here isn't as simple as it seems. What does that mean? Was the accident staged? Is Irina more guilty than they say? Or, what were you thinking about? Pavel's voice made her startle. He stood in the doorway, tall, straight, with the cane in his hand. I am just tired, she lied. He moved toward his armchair, moving confidently, almost without touching the furniture. You lie often, have you noticed? Don't make excuses. He sat down, placing the cane on his knees. Everyone has secrets. The question is whether they are worth keeping. Zoia felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Why do you say that? For no reason. He smiled for the first time since she had known him. The smile was strange, almost frightening on the disfigured face. I am just thinking out loud. Do you know what is the most interesting thing about blindness? That you start to hear what you didn't notice before. Intonation, pauses, breathing. He turned his head toward her, and it seemed to Zoia that his dead eyes were looking right into her soul. And voices. A person can change everything. Name, appearance, life. But the voice remains. Zoya's heart stopped. What do you mean? A long pause. Nothing for now. He leaned back in the armchair. Read to me. We stopped at part 4. Zoia took the book with stiff fingers and began to read. Her voice was trembling, but Pavel did not say a word. That night she had a dream. She was standing in the middle of a dark hall, and shadows were swirling around her, faceless, whispering. They were calling her by name, but not Zoia. Lidia. Lidia! Lidia! She woke up in a cold sweat.
Outside, the day was dawning. The house was quiet, that special silence before dawn, when the world has not yet woken up. Zoia got up, put on her robe, and went out into the hallway. She needed to drink water, to calm down, to get this cursed dream out of her head. On the stairs, she heard voices, quiet, muffled, coming from Pavel's office on the ground floor. She froze. "She cannot be trusted," said Raisa. "She is hiding something, I feel it." "Everyone hides something." Pavel's voice was calm, almost lazy. "The question is whether it matters." "It does. You do not see—" "I generally do not see. Have you forgotten?" Pause. "Forgive me, that is not what I meant. I know."
Sound of footsteps. Pavel was walking around the room. "Zoya Petrovna will stay. For now. I need time." Time for what? Long silence. To understand why fate brought her into my house. Zoya stepped back, pressing herself against the wall. Her heart was beating so hard that it seemed the whole house could hear it. He knows. Or he suspects. And he is playing with her like a cat with a mouse. The next 2 weeks, Zoya lived on pins and needles. Every look from Pavel. Empty, sightless, but no less piercing, seemed like an accusation to her. She took apart every word of his, looking for a hidden meaning. But he behaved as usual, listened to the reading, asked questions about books, sometimes told stories from his life, fragmentary, without beginning or end, about construction sites, about people, about money that comes and goes, about the past, never. Zoya began to think she was mistaken, that his words about the voice were just thoughts out loud, not a hint, that the conversation with Raisa concerned something else. But she could not calm down. In the middle of November, the letter arrived. Zoya was just sorting the mail, one of her duties she had recently learned about. Bills, advertising pamphlets, invitations to charity evenings that Pavel ignored. And among all this, an envelope without a return address, handwritten. The handwriting was feminine, neat, with a slight slant to the left. To Pavel Arkadievich Volkov, personal. Zoya turned the envelope in her hands. Something about it was wrong. Maybe the lack of a stamp? The letter was clearly delivered in person, dropped into the mailbox at the gate. Maybe the handwriting itself, too diligent, as if the writer wanted to change their usual style. She took the letter to Pavel. "You have correspondence without a return address." He held out his hand. "Read it." Zoya opened the envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper, covered in the same neat handwriting. She began to read aloud. "Pavel Arkadievich, you think you know the truth about that night. You are mistaken. The truck did not end up in the oncoming lane by accident. Irina did not stay alive by accident. Ask your new caregiver. Maybe she knows more than she says. A friend." Zoya fell silent. Her hands were trembling. Pavel sat motionless. His face had turned to stone. "Read it again," he said quietly. She read it. "Give me the letter." Zoya placed the sheet in his outstretched palm. He ran his fingers over the paper, as if trying to read the words by touch. "Ask your new caregiver," he repeated slowly. "Interesting." "I don't know what this letter is about," said Zoya. Her voice sounded too high, too frightened. "I have no idea." "I believe you." She cut herself short. "Believe you, for now." He folded the letter and put it in his pocket. "But someone wants me not to believe you. The question is, who and why?" After that day, the atmosphere in the house changed. Reza looked at Zoya with open suspicion. Tamara avoided her, averting her eyes when they met. Even the cook, a silent man of about 60, began to place her plate on the table with a specific clatter, as if expressing disapproval. Only Pavel behaved as before, or almost as before. Sometimes Zoya caught his sightless gaze on her and felt that he was thinking about something connected to her. 3 days later, the second letter arrived. She is lying to you about her past. Ask her where she is from. Ask her what her name was before. A friend. Pavel listened in silence. Where are you from, Zoya Petrovna? He asked when she finished reading. From a small town in the south, she answered. That was true, partially. Then you moved. Where to? First to relatives, then to many places. I told you, my husband and I moved often. Yes, you said that. He drummed his fingers on the armrest. But what was your name before? Zoya's heart dropped. What do you mean? Did you change your surname, first name? She swallowed. She couldn't lie. He would sense it. But telling the truth. My surname at marriage, like all women. And that is all. Pause. Long, agonizing. And that is all? Pavel nodded. Good. You may go. Zoya left the room, barely suppressing a tremble. Someone knew the truth about her and wanted to destroy her new life here, in this house, next to the man she had once betrayed. But who? The answer came unexpectedly. The next day, when Pavel was resting after lunch, Zoya decided to walk to the gate to check the mailbox earlier than usual. Maybe she could manage to intercept the next letter, to read it first. At the gate stood a woman, short, dark-haired, in an expensive coat. Her face seemed familiar to Zoya, but she couldn't remember from where. Are you the new caregiver? Asked the woman. The voice was pleasant, melodic, but there was a chill in it. Yes, and you, Irina? The woman smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes. Irina Dmitrievna Lishchenko, Maxim's former fiancée. Zoya froze. A photograph. A dark-haired woman next to Pavel's son. The same eyes. Dark, attentive, with a shadow of fatigue at the bottom. You are not allowed to be here, said Zoya, cautiously. Pavel Arkadyevich has forbidden your name to be spoken in the house. I know. Irina stepped closer, and Zoya saw that she was older than she appeared in the photograph. Wrinkles around the eyes, a gray strand in the dark hair. But I am not in the house. I am at the gate, and I need to speak with you. With me? Why? Irina measured her with a long look. Because you are the only person in this house who does not know the whole truth, and probably the only one who will want to know it. They talked in a cafe 2 blocks from the mansion. Zoya had asked for time off under the pretext of going to the pharmacy. Raisa watched her go with a suspicious look, but did not object. Irina ordered tea, Zoya nothing. Her stomach was tied in a tight knot. I will speak plainly, began Irina, clasping the cup with her palms. 3 years ago, the man I loved more than life died, and the man who was supposed to become my father went blind. Since then, I have lived with a sense of guilt that does not let me breathe. It was not your fault. The truck was staged. Zoya froze. What? The truck driver. They found him 6 months later. Dead. Officially, suicide. Irina sipped her tea. Her hands were absolutely calm. But a week before his death, he received a large transfer to his account. Very large. How do you know? I have been investigating for 3 years, with my own money, with my own efforts. Irina looked her in the eyes. Someone wanted to kill Pavel Arkadyevich, and almost succeeded. Zoya felt the room begin to spin. But who? Why? That is what I am trying to find out too. Irina leaned closer. Pavel has made many enemies in his life. Competitors, offended partners, people he ruined on his way to the top. But there is someone from the past, from a very distant past. Zoya's heart clenched. Who? Boris Kremnov. The name hit her like a slap. Boris, she whispered. He Is he alive? Irina narrowed her eyes. Do you know him? Zoya shook her head too quickly, too nervously. No, just the name seemed familiar. Boris Kremnov and Pavel Volkov were once friends, continued Irina, not taking her eyes off her. Then something happened, something related to a woman. Pavel never told the details, but I know that he left his hometown because of Boris, and that he never forgave him. That was a long time ago, 27 years ago. Irina nodded. But hatred does not age. Boris went bankrupt 10 years ago.
His father died, connections dried up, the business collapsed, and Pavel had by then become one of the richest people in the region. A beautiful irony, isn't it? Zoya remained silent. Fragments of memories flashed through her head. Boris, his smile, his promises, his betrayal. I think Boris organized the accident, said Irina, out of envy, out of revenge, out of a desire to take everything Pavel has built. But I have no proof. Why are you telling me this? Irina finished her tea and put the cup on the table. Because someone is sending letters to Pavel, anonymous, mean, directed against you. And I want to know, is it you, or does someone want to frame you? It is not me. Then who? Zoya opened her mouth and closed it. She didn't know. She had no idea, but something inside her whispered, "You know, you are just afraid to admit it." Zoya returned to the mansion toward evening. Her head was buzzing with information. Her heart beat unevenly, raggedly. Boris, 27 years later, and Boris again. She went up to the second floor and froze at the door of her room. The door was ajar. Zoya pushed it and entered. On the bed sat Raisa. In her hands she held an old photograph, the very one Zoya kept at the bottom of her bag under a pile of laundry, the only thing from her past life she hadn't been able to throw away. In the photograph was a young girl with long dark hair. Next to her, a young man, with a smile Zoya would have recognized out of 1,000. Pavel and Lidia. Interesting, said Raisa in an even voice. Very interesting. Zoya stood in the doorway, unable to move. The world around her shrank to the size of this room, to the photograph in strange hands, to Raisa's cold eyes. You went through my things, she said finally. Her voice sounded strange, hoarse. I am fulfilling my duties. Raisa stood up without letting go of the photograph. I guard Pavel Alkadovich's peace from all threats. I am not a threat. No, Raisa raised the picture. Then explain why you are keeping a photograph with the young Pavel Arkadovich, and who is this girl next to him? Zoya remained silent. I recognized him immediately, continued Raisa. He has hardly changed. The same eyes, the same smile. Yes, the accident, of course. She took a step forward. So, who are you really? There was no choice. Lying didn't work anymore. Lidia, said Zoya quietly. My name was Lidia, 27 years ago. Raisa looked at her for a long time, unblinking. Then she nodded shortly, as if confirming something to herself. That Lidia, the woman who broke his heart. How do you... I have been working for Pavel Arkadovich for 15 years. Raisa put the photograph in her pocket. I know everything about him, including the story about the girl who betrayed him with his best friend. Zoya closed her eyes. The past had caught up with her. Inevitably, inexorably. What are you going to do? Raisa walked past her to the door, stopped on the threshold. Tell him, of course. He has the right to know who he led into his house. Wait, Zoya grabbed her hand. Please, let me do it myself. You yourself what? Run away? Raisa pulled free, like 27 years ago. Tell him myself. Zoya looked her in the eyes, not averting her gaze. He deserves to hear the truth from me, not from you. Long pause. Raisa studied her face, looking for something, weighing it. One day, she said finally. You have until tomorrow evening. If by then you don't confess yourself, I will do it.
She left, closing the door behind her. Zoya sank onto the bed. One day.
24 hours to find the words for the confession she had postponed for 27 years. Zoya didn't sleep all night. She sat by the window, looked at the black garden, and thought about how to put together the words she hadn't spoken for 27 years. Pavel, it's me, Lidia, the one who betrayed you. It sounded pathetic. It sounded like an excuse that couldn't exist. I didn't know you were here. I didn't look for you. Fate, even worse. Fate is a convenient cover for cowards. By dawn, she hadn't come up with anything. Her head was heavy, her eyes dry from insomnia. In the mirror, an old, exhausted woman looked at her, whom she barely recognized.
There was a knock at the door. Zoya Petrovna? Tamara's voice from behind the door sounded anxious. Pavel Arkadovich wants to see you. Urgently. Her heart dropped to her heels. I'm coming. She washed with cold water, combed her hair, pulled on her dress. Her hands were trembling so much she could barely button the buttons. Raisa. Raisa hadn't kept her word. She had told him at night, without waiting for the promised deadline. Zoya went down to the first floor. Every step was a struggle, as if her legs were filled with lead. In her head, it pounded. This is the end. This is the end. This is the end. Pavel's office was plunged into semi-darkness. Curtains drawn, only the desk lamp cast a circle of yellow light on the writing desk. He was sitting not in his usual chair by the window, but at the table, straight, tense. In front of him lay an envelope. Close the door, he said. Zoya obeyed. Sit down. She sat opposite, folding her hands in her lap. The silence stretched for an eternity. Another letter arrived, said Pavel finally. Do you want to know what is in it? Yes. He took the envelope and handed it to her. Read it, aloud. Zoya opened the envelope with fingers that wouldn't bend. The same handwriting, the same neat slant. Pavel Arkadovich. Her real name is Lidia, Lidia Petrovna Maltseva. The very same one you loved, the very same one who chose Boris. She did not find you by accident. Ask her why she came to your house.
A friend, her voice broke on the last words. Silence. Pavel sat motionless. His face was impenetrable, a mask of scars and shadows. I wanted to tell you myself, whispered Zoya. Today Raisa found the photograph and... I know. She froze. What? I know who you are. He turned his head toward her, and his dead eyes seemed to look right through her. I have known since the first day. The world tilted. How? How is that possible? The voice. He grinned slightly. I told you, the voice doesn't change. You can change your name, appearance, whole life, but the voice of the person you loved, that you don't forget. Zoya couldn't breathe. The air got stuck in her throat, refusing to go further. You knew all this time? Yes. Why didn't you say? Why didn't you kick me out? Pavel fell silent, then slowly rose from the table and approached her. Zoya wanted to move back, but couldn't. She sat like she was paralyzed. He stopped next to her. She felt his presence with every cell of her body, the warmth, the smell of cologne, the heavy breathing. Stand up, he said quietly. She stood up. He reached out his hand, slowly, carefully, and found her palm. His fingers were warm, dry, rough from old calluses, the hands of a man who had once worked physically, despite all his wealth. He squeezed her hand and whispered, Lidia. One word. Her name. The name she hadn't heard for 27 years. Tears gushed out on their own, hot, uncontrollable. She cried silently, without trying to pull her hand away, without trying to run. Why? She repeated through tears. Why didn't you kick me out? Pavel was silent for a long time, then began to speak slowly, as if every word came to him with difficulty. For 27 years I hated you every day, every night.
You were my curse, the woman who destroyed my life before it even began." Zoya closed her eyes. "I built an empire to prove to you you were wrong. Every ruble earned, every house built, everything was for this. So that one day you would find out who I became and regret your choice." "I regretted it," she whispered, "that same night and every day after." "I know." He ran his fingers over her palm, over her wrist, as if recognizing her anew. "Now I know." "From where?" "Because you came here poor and broken. Not for money, otherwise you would have asked already. Not for revenge, you are too frightened for that. You came because you had nowhere to go, and you stayed, although you found out who I am." Zoya opened her eyes. Through the veil of tears, she saw his face, disfigured, aged, but still recognizable. The face of the man she loved, whom she betrayed, whom she lost. "I didn't know it was you," she said, "when I came for the interview."
"I didn't know until I saw you, and then it was already too late." "Too late for what? To run away again?" He grinned bitterly, without joy. "You always ran, Lidia. From problems, from responsibility, from yourself. That is your nature, I know. But this time you stayed. Why?" Zoya fell silent. The truth was complex, tangled, and simple at the same time. "Because I am tired of running. Because I have nowhere else to go. And because—" she swallowed. "Because I owe you for everything." Pavel nodded, let go of her hand, and stepped back. "Someone wants to quarrel us," he said, changing the subject. "These letters are not an accident. Someone knows about our past."
"Someone wants me to kick you out, or for you to leave yourself. Irina thinks it is Boris." Pavel turned sharply. "Did you speak with Irina yesterday?" "At the date." Zoya wiped her tears with the back of her hand. She told about the accident, about the truck driver, about the money in his account. Pavel was silent, his face turned to stone. "She has been conducting the investigation for 3 years," continued Zoya. "She believes the accident was staged, that someone wanted to kill you." "Boris," pronounced Pavel dully. "She thinks it is Boris." "Yes." He walked to the window, stood with his back to her, placing his palm on the cold glass. "Boris went bankrupt 10 years ago. I know, I watched him. Not out of revenge. Curiosity. I wanted to know how his life turned out after what he did. And? Badly. His father died, leaving debts. His wife left. The business collapsed. The last I heard, he lived in some hole on the outskirts, drank, and hated the whole world." Zoya approached him, stood nearby, not touching. "Do you think he is capable of murder?" Pavel was silent for a long time. 27 years ago, I would have said no. Boris was a coward. A beautiful, charming coward who never did the dirty work himself. But now? Now, he turned to her. "Now I am not sure of anything. A man who has lost everything is capable of anything. I know that from myself." Silence hung between them, thick, heavy. "What will we do?" asked Zoya. Pavel reached out his hand and found her shoulder, squeezed it briefly, almost in a friendly way. "We will find the one who writes these letters, and we will find out the truth about that night." He fell silent. "Together." "Why together? After everything I did?" "Because you are the only person who knows both my past and my present." He removed his hand. "And because I want to understand one thing." "Which one?" "Whether a betrayal from 27 years ago can be forgiven." Zoya looked at him, blind, disfigured, lonely. At the man whose life she had once destroyed. At the man who had every right to hate her. "I don't deserve forgiveness," she said quietly. "Maybe," he smiled slightly, "but that is not for you to decide." The following days merged into one, tense, nervous, full of waiting. Zoya didn't hide anymore. She walked around the house with her head held high, spoke to Pavel openly, without fear. Raisa looked at her with undisguised bewilderment. The manager clearly expected a different outcome: screams, scandal, expulsion. Instead, Pavel announced that Zoya Petrovna remains in her position.
Without explanations. Did you tell him? Asked Raisa one morning, catching Zoya in the corridor. Yes. And he didn't kick you out? No. Raisa shook her head. I have worked for him for 15 years. I thought I knew him. She looked at Zoya with something resembling respect. Reluctant, forced. Apparently, I was wrong. After this conversation, relations between them did not warm up, but the hostility disappeared. Raisa no longer watched Zoya's every step, no longer searched her things. She accepted the situation, albeit without understanding. On the third day after the confession, Zoya met with Irina again, this time in the mansion itself, in the small living room on the ground floor. Pavel sat in the chair by the fireplace. The fire crackled, casting bizarre shadows on the walls. Thank you for coming, he said when Irina sat opposite. You allowed me to return to this house. Irina's voice trembled. I didn't think that ever. Enough, Pavel raised his hand. I was unjust to you. For 3 years I was unjust. The accident was not your fault. I always knew it. But he fell silent. Pain requires a guilty party. You were the closest. Irina covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. Zoya stood by the window, watching this scene. 2 people bound by grief that neither of them deserved. And she, the third, guilty of another ancient crime. Tell me everything, said Pavel when Irina calmed down. From the very beginning. About your investigation. Irina wiped her tears and began to speak. The story she told was frightening. 3 years of searching. 3 years of dead ends and false trails. She hired a private detective. He found information about the truck driver. His name was Stepan Korzhov, 42 years old, a former trucker fired for drunkenness. A week before the accident, $300,000 came into his account, said Irina. Transfer from an offshore company. The ends were cut, but the detective found out that the company was registered in the name of a figurehead, a certain Artyom Zaitsev. Who is that? Asked Pavel. Boris Kremyov's cousin. Silence. Only the fire crackled in the fireplace. Are you sure? Pavel's voice was dull. 90%. Irina took a folder with documents out of her bag. Here is everything. Statements, photographs, witness testimonies. Artyom Zaitsev died 2 years ago. Overdose. But before his death, he managed to leave tracks. Zoya came closer. What does leave tracks mean? He bragged in a bar that he helped his relative solve an old problem. Irina looked at Pavel. The bartender remembered. I found him. Pavel stood up and paced the room. His cane tapped on the parquet, measured, rhythmic. Boris, he pronounced finally. 27 years later. He is still trying to destroy me. But why? Zoya asked. You haven't seen each other all these years. He went bankrupt long ago. You achieved success. What is the point? Pavel stopped. The point is that I took from him the only thing he was proud of, the victory over me. I don't understand. When I left the city, Boris was triumphant. He won. He took you. He destroyed my life. He banished me. Pavel turned to Zoya. But then you left him, and I rose up, and his victory turned into defeat. Irina nodded. The detective found out that Boris has been watching you for years. He collected newspaper clippings, photos from events. He had a whole file, the Volkov file. Mania, Zoya whispered. Obsession, Irina corrected. He couldn't reconcile with the fact that you, Pavel Arkadievich, became who you became, that his life collapsed and yours blossomed. Pavel remained silent. Zoya saw his jaw muscles tightening. "Where is he now?" he asked finally. "Here, in this city." Irina hesitated. "He moved here 3 months ago. He rents a room in a working-class district." The detective established the address. Zoya felt a cold shiver run down her spine. 3 months ago, she repeated. "That is when you hired me here." Irina looked at her. "Coincidence?" Pavel turned to Zoya. "How did you find out about this vacancy?" "Advertisement in the newspaper. I told you." "Which newspaper?" Zoya frowned, remembering. "A free one."
"They threw it under the door of my room. At the time, I didn't pay attention." "Threw," Pavel repeated. "You didn't take it from the store. You didn't buy it. They threw it to you." The realization hit her like a bucket of ice water. "I was set up," she whispered. "From the very beginning." "Boris knew where you lived," said Pavel slowly. "He knew you had become a widow and needed money. He threw the newspaper with the ad, which he placed himself, to bring you here." "But why?" Irina leaned forward. "To destroy you both, with a single blow. Imagine, you find out who Zoya is, you kick her out. She remains on the street. The old wound opens again."
"You both suffer. And the letters," added Pavel. "The letters were supposed to accelerate the process, to ensure that I learned the truth before we, with Lidia." He stopped abruptly. "Before you get closer," finished Irina. "Boris miscalculated. He thought the hatred between you was stronger than anything else, that 27 years was a sufficient term for it to turn to stone." Zoya sank onto the sofa. Her legs could not hold her. "This is madness," she said. "To plan revenge for so many years. For a man who has lost everything, time does not matter," said Pavel. "I was like that myself after you left. For months I thought only of one thing, how to make you regret." He approached her and sat down next to her. "But then I understood. Revenge is a poison that poisons the one who carries it. I chose to live. Boris did not." That same evening, they made a plan. "We need proof," said Irina. "What I found is circumstantial evidence. It is not enough for the police." "Then we will get direct proof," said Pavel. "How?" He grinned. "Boris has always been vain. He won't be able to resist if I propose we meet, to talk like old friends." "It's dangerous," objected Zoya. "He has already tried to kill you." "He tried to kill me by the hands of others. He himself is a coward. That hasn't gone anywhere." Pavel turned to Irina. "Can you organize the recording of the conversation?" "My detective is a former police officer. He has the equipment." "Then we act." Zoya grabbed Pavel's hand. "I'm going with you." "No, Pavel, no." His voice was firm. "If Boris sees you, he will shut down or snap. You are his main sore point, Lidia. He still hasn't forgiven you for leaving him. But, trust me." He found her face with his palm, ran his fingers over her cheek. "Once, after everything." Zoya closed her eyes. His touch was tender, almost imperceptible. That is how he touched her 27 years ago, in another life, in another world. "Fine," she whispered. "But if something goes wrong, then you will know where to find me." They set the meeting for the next evening. Pavel sent a letter to Boris through Irina's detective, who had tracked down his address. "Boris, I know you are in the city. I know why you are here. I propose we talk man to man. Tomorrow at 8 in the evening, the old park by the river. Come alone. Pavel." The answer came an hour later. One word. "Coming." Zoya did not sleep that night. She sat in the dark, listening to the wind howling outside the window, and thought about what would happen tomorrow. 27 years ago, she made a choice that destroyed 3 lives. Now, fate was giving her a chance to fix everything, or at least to try. Towards morning, she got up and went down to the kitchen. Pavel was already sitting there, in the dark, without light. "Can't sleep?" he asked, hearing her steps. "No. You neither?"
I forgot long ago how to sleep more than 4 hours. He pointed to the chair next to him. Sit down. She sat down. For a while they were silent, two people in the dark, bound by the past and the future. If tomorrow something goes wrong, began Pavel. Don't speak like that. Let me finish. He found her hand on the table and covered it with his. If something happens, I want you to know I forgave you a long time ago, even before you came into this house. Tears burned her eyes. Why didn't you say so earlier? Because I wanted you to earn it.
He squeezed her fingers slightly. And you earned it by staying, by not running away. Pasha, shh. He brought her hand to her lips and touched her knuckles with a light, almost weightless kiss. Whatever happens, tomorrow we are even. Remember that. Zoia wept silently, without wiping her tears. Outside the window, day was slowly breaking. The evening was cold. The first snow, early, unexpected, covered the city with a white blanket, turning familiar streets into unfamiliar ones. Zoia stood at the window in the library and watched the snowflakes spinning in the light of the street lamps.
Pavel had left an hour ago, together with Irina's detective, who was supposed to record the conversation from a car parked nearby. He will handle it, said Irina, who was sitting in the armchair by the extinguished fireplace. Pavel Arkadievich is a strong man. I know. Then why are you so nervous? Zoia turned away from the window. Because 27 years ago I already lost him due to my stupidity, and I am afraid of losing him again. Irina fell silent. Do you love him? The question hung in the air, simple and impossible at the same time. I loved him then, said Zoia slowly, but I was too young to understand that, too stupid, too greedy for a beautiful life. And now? Zoia looked at her hands, wrinkled with age spots.
The hands of a woman who lived a life full of mistakes. Now I understand that love is not butterflies in the stomach and not the promise of Paris. It is when a person knows the worst about you and still does not turn away. Irina nodded. Maxime told me the same thing, a week before the accident. Her voice trembled. He said, Ira, I know you are not perfect, and neither am I, but together we are right. Zoia approached her and sat down next to her. I am sorry that it happened this way. With Maxime, with you. Me too. Irina wiped her eyes. But you know what? These 3 years have taught me one thing. You cannot live in the past. You can only carry it with you and move forward. The phone rang at 9:30. Zoia grabbed the receiver so fast she almost dropped it. Hello? It's me. Pavel's voice was tired, but calm. It is over. What happened? Are you okay? Completely. Pause. Boris confessed. To everything. The detective recorded every word. Zoia sank onto the chair. Her legs gave way. How? How did it happen? He came to the park drunk. I smelled the scent as soon as he approached. Pavel chuckled briefly. 27 years, and he is still the same. A beautiful coward who cannot handle life without the bottle. What did he say? At first, nothing. He stood and looked at me, probably enjoying the spectacle, a blind colleague instead of the successful businessman he remembered from the newspapers. Pavel's voice became harder. Then I asked him directly, why? Why the accident? Why kill my son? Zoia held her breath. And he answered? Yes. Long pause. He said he hated me every day for the last 27 years, that I stole his life. You stole? But he... I know. But inside his head, everything turned upside down. He believed that if it weren't for me, you would have stayed with him. That if it weren't for the fight, his father wouldn't have forced him to marry the official's daughter. That everything went wrong because of me. That is madness. It is a sickness.
Pavel sighed. For 27 years he stewed in his own hatred. It corroded him from the inside like acid. When his business collapsed, when his wife left, when nothing remained, he decided he would take everything from me so that we would become equal. Zoya closed her eyes. Before her appeared the face of Boris, young, beautiful, self-assured. The face of the man who once promised her happiness. What will happen now? The police are already on their way. The detective handed over the recording. Boris will be charged with organizing a murder and attempted murder. Pause. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. Are you okay with this? Pavel was silent for a long time. No, he said finally. I am not okay. I lost my son, I lost my sight, and all because of a man I once called a friend.
That cannot be okay, Pasha. But you know what? His voice softened. When he confessed, when he said all this out loud, I felt no joy, no relief, only emptiness and fatigue, and the desire to return home. Then come back. I am coming already, wait. He returned an hour later. Snow plastered his coat. His hair was wet. Zoya met him in the hall. She wanted to say something, but the words got stuck in her throat. Instead, she simply hugged him, tightly, desperately, the way you hug a person you almost lost. He froze for a moment. Then his hands wrapped around her back. They stood like that for a long time, two broken lives, two lonely people who found each other across decades of pain and mistakes. Lidia, he whispered into her hair. Yes, you are crying. She laughed through tears. I know. Why? Because you returned, because everything is over, because, she stumbled, because you called me Lidia. He pulled back, found her face with his palms. But how should I call you? However you want. Lidia, Zoya, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that you are near. His lips touched her forehead, tenderly, almost weightlessly. Then stay. Forever. Forever. 3 months later, spring came early that year. The snow melted towards the end of February, and by March, the garden outside the mansion window came alive. Buds swelled on the trees. The first grass broke through. Birds began to sing. Zoya stood at the kitchen window and watched the gardener, new, hired a month ago, trimming the rose bushes. Pavel insisted on putting the garden in order. Enough living among dead things, he said then. On the table lay a letter, a real one, with a return address and a stamp. From Anastasia. Zoya found her 2 months ago, through old acquaintances, through social networks, through a persistence she didn't know she had before. She wrote a long letter in which she told everything about her past, about Lidia Maltseva, about the betrayal, about the flight, about the years of lies, about Pavel, about the fact that finally she stopped hiding. Anastasia did not answer immediately. A month passed, then another one. Zoya had already lost hope. And here is the letter. Mom, I read your letter several times. At first I was angry, then I cried, then I was angry again. You lied to me my whole life. I don't even know who you really are. But you know what? I am not perfect either. I stopped calling because I was afraid to tell you the truth. Andre and I divorced. I was ashamed. Stupid, right? We both hid from each other. Maybe it is time to stop? I will come in May if you still want to see me. Anastasia. Zoya reread these lines again and again. The words blurred from tears, but she smiled. Good news? Pavel stood in the doorway. He moved more confidently. Now he had learned every corner of the house, every step. Anastasia is coming in May. Finally, he approached and placed his hand on her shoulder. I am glad. You don't mind? Mind what? Me meeting your daughter. He chuckled. I waited 27 years for the opportunity to find out what your life became. I think I will manage." Zoya turned to him. "You are a strange man, Pavel Volkov." "Why?" "Because anyone else in your place would have hated me. And you? And I am too tired to hate."
He found her hand and intertwined his fingers with hers. Hatred is a heavy burden. Boris carried it for 27 years and broke. I do not want to repeat his path. What do you want? He paused. Outside the window, the gardener whistled a tune. Birds sang. The world was waking up to a new life. I want to know who you have become over these years. I want to hear stories about your daughter. I want to sit with you in the evenings and listen to how you read. He turned his head to the window, as if he could see the garden through the glass. I want to live the rest of my life, not in darkness, not in loneliness, not in the past. Zoya pressed herself against him. Is it possible? I don't know. He embraced her. But I want to try, together with you. In the evening, they sat in the library. Zoya read aloud, no longer Dostoevsky, but something light, spring-like. Pavel listened, leaning back in the armchair, and on his disfigured face was a smile, real, alive. Outside, it was getting dark. The first stars appeared in the sky. 27 years ago, a young girl named Lidia made a choice that destroyed 3 lives. She chose the beautiful wrapper instead of true feeling, money instead of love, fear instead of courage. Now, after almost 3 decades, having passed through loss, pain, loneliness, and despair, she finally understood what she should have understood then. Love is not what you take, it is what you give. And sometimes, very rarely, fate gives a second chance to those who do not deserve it. Zoya closed the book and looked at Pavel. He was sleeping, for the first time in a long while. His face was calm, peaceful. She covered him with a blanket, kissed his gray temple, and went out onto the balcony. The night air was fresh, smelling of spring and hope. Somewhere far away, a dog barked. In the neighboring house, lights burned. Other lives, other stories. Zoya, no, Lidia, looked at the stars and thought that for the first time in 27 years, she knows exactly where her home is. Not a building, not an address, not a city. A man. A blind millionaire with a disfigured face and a wounded heart, who recognized her by her voice and forgave her. Thank you for listening to the end. Take care of those you love. And remember, sometimes forgiveness is the only way home.